Hi everybody! I would love to share with you today the survival story of my grandfather, Avraham Laufer. Avraham was born on 1934 in a small Polish town called Lutsk, in which half of the people were Jewish. He had five older siblings, three sisters and two brothers. He lived with his family by the town river, and his father Aaron owned a bakery with his grandfather Zaygold. His mother Rivka stayed at home and took care of the kids. Avraham's family was traditional. They attended the shul every Saturday, and as Avraham turned 7, he was supposed to start learning in the Ghetto when the Germans invaded Poland. Shortly, the Germans made a ghetto in the town, and luckily my grandfather's house was in the limited area, so his family didn't have to move. He remembers playing with his friends in the ghetto, but he was very sad and hungry. He even remembered one time in which he was so hungry he'd beat his own mother. Slowly, the conditions got worse. People started dying from hunger and diseases. My grandfather used to smuggle food into the ghetto. He walked to the near towns and begged farmers for food. His grandfather died of hunger in the ghetto. My grandfather can remember soldiers walking around the street, shooting Jews for no reason. One day, about a year after the Germans arrived, they decided to execute the whole ghetto. The soldiers gathered all the Jews in the center of the town, and they took them on trucks to shooting pits in the forest. They separated men and women and children, told them to take off their clothes, and shot them on the edge of the pits. My grandfather can't remember why, but when he stood with his family in the center of the town, he decided to let go of his mother's hand and run away. He went to his home where he found his father and older brothers, and they hid there. After a week, the Germans called all the Jews to get out of their hiding places, and they said that they would not be harmed. His father and brothers left and joined the camp of all the remaining Jews. All the remaining Jews were killed after a week, besides Avraham's uncle, who had a police officer friend that saved him. His uncle came to rescue him, and he took him to a Ukraine army camp where they worked. After a while, they heard the whole camp was about to be executed, so they ran away. His uncle sent my grandfather to get some water for their journey, and by the time my grandfather was back, his uncle was gone. Avraham didn't know what to do. He went near houses and asked for food, but they called the police on him, so he ran away. He went back to the ghetto, but it was empty. He went back to the army camp where he met his uncle's friend, who decided to help him. After all, he was only 8 years old. His uncle's friend sent Avraham to live with a family of farmers that didn't know he was Jewish. Avraham worked in the fields of the family and was abused by them. After about a year and a half, the Russians came back to fight for the territory, and the family hid in the shelter they had, while Avraham had to turn off fires in the house that were caused by the fighting and the bullets. Avraham almost died. Among the Russian soldiers, there were partisans too. One of them was Avraham's uncle, which he chose to ignore. The farmer's family decided to pass my grandfather to one of their neighbors, which was much nicer. Avraham worked for them too, until one day, after the war was over, his uncle somehow found him. His uncle asked him if he wanted to go to America with him. My grandfather told him he doesn't know what America is, and his uncle said it's a good place. They took the train to Krakow, then traveled to Lodz, from there to Germany. From there they split. My grandfather moved to England, and his uncle traveled to the US. He lived there in a host family for a year and a half, until he was 15, and decided to make Aliyah with the help of the Jewish Agency. He got on the Atzmaut boat on 1949, and they stopped in Haifa. My grandfather lived in a few kibbutzim in the area, recruited to the army, then moved to Haifa and worked in the port. He got married, had 2 children, and today he still lives in Haifa and has 4 grandchildren. One of them is me. So thank you so much for listening to my grandfather's story. May we all remember and never forget.